Welcome to the secret world of human trafficking. I'm your host, David J. Story. I'm also the author of the Omega book series, researcher, and advocate committed to exposing one of the world's fastest growing criminal enterprise. Each episode is dedicated to educating, raising awareness, and giving a voice to those working to combat human trafficking and to those whose lives have been affected by it. Today, we're joined by someone with a unique perspective to this issue. Through their knowledge, experience, and personal journey, they'll help us better understand the realities of human trafficking, the challenges we face, and the work being done to bring hope, justice, and healing. Whether you're listening for the first time or you've been with us from the beginning, thank you for being a part of this mission. For more educational resources, articles, podcast episodes, and information about my books, visit davidjstory.com. Now, let's begin today's conversation. It is my privilege to welcome today's guest. And here we are with our special guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for us?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's not every day you find somebody who wants to talk about sex trafficking, so I'm always really grateful when I find someone. So my name is Karin Freeland-Aviles, and I am the ministry coordinator at an organization called Switch. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we exist to shine a light on sex trafficking and exploitation in our community. And we also offer support and healing for survivors of sex trafficking. So we have a number of programs that we offer prevention training for our youth in our schools, summer camps, pretty much anywhere youth are gathering where we can get in front of them. We also have a strip club outreach, which is kind of the wildest thing we do, but we know that in the strip clubs, that these dancers are some of the most vulnerable women in our community. And this is often a piece of the grooming process to get women more comfortable with being naked and pushing their boundaries. So we go out and we meet these women right where they are and offer them escape. If they want a hand out to change their life, then we're here to help them do that. And if not, then we bring
Fantastic.
them curated goodie bags and things, and we just love them right where they are.
Oh,
We
great.
also have the restoration program, which serves women 18 and up. And think of it like long-term outpatient care. It's this really holistic case management where we can
Mhm.
connect them to services like therapy or legal services. We even have a tattoo cover-up partner because a lot of times women in
Wow.
the life will have tattoos. And so we can turn it into something else so they don't get triggered and remember their past every time they look at that tattoo on their body. So it's really beautiful to be able to walk alongside these women and help them set goals and get them to the point where they're able to function in society like the rest of us.
Well, that is fantastic. That's a great ministry that you have going here.
Thank
Tell
you.
us a little bit more about the prevention information that you hand out to the youth. What does that
Yeah.
include?
Well, we really go into the schools and we have a 3-week curriculum that we work with the kids on. So typically in week 1, we're talking a lot about those red flags, that
Mhm.
things that they should look out for with potential predators. We're talking about what trafficking even is. And I know we're going to talk shortly about some of the misconceptions because a lot of kids and even women and men don't even realize they're being trafficked because of how
Mhm.
it happens with someone that they know, love, and trust. And so, we really want to educate them on what this looks like so that they can self identify if it's happening to them in their lives. And we have had disclosures, so we know that this curriculum works. In week 2, we typically come back and talk about the dangers of pornography and the public health crisis that it really is. And help them strengthen their vulnerabilities. Because as you'll see, that's what a lot of these predators are preying on. They're finding the vulnerabilities in our kids' lives. And so if we can teach the kids how to strengthen those, they're going to be less likely to be targeted or to be able to be trafficked. And then in week 3, we talk more about healthy relationships and just make sure they know what love actually looks like. And then we give
Right.
them some strategies for how to protect themselves. We sometimes do some role play if there's time, give them some scenarios that they can think through as a group or in partners so that they have a safety plan for themselves. And then, of course, we do have a resource handout that we give them if they need housing or they need to call the Switch hotline or the National Trafficking hotline, and drug and alcohol, substance abuse resources, just to kind of cover all the bases.
Fantastic. What are the age group that you work with?
Yeah, so we predominantly are in the high school groups. We can adjust our curriculum to the middle schools, but eventually we would love to be in a position where we can even get into the elementary schools and obviously present all of this in an age appropriate way. But because so many kids are exposed to pornography by ages 8 to 11, is sort of the average age, by the time we get to high school, we're almost too late to the game. So
Right.
we'll take what
Yeah.
we can get. We're grateful to be in the high schools, but we really got to get to these kids earlier. And unfortunately, a lot of parents either don't feel equipped to have the conversations or they're ignoring it. Like, not my kid, can't happen to my kid. We're not talking about sex in our house. And so then the kids actually are left exposed because they don't know what is happening to them is wrong or how to protect themselves. So
Hmm.
we're really hopeful that with some grant funding that we're applying for and hopefully some additional personal donors, individual donors, we're going to be able to also put together a parent resource and toolkit that we can give out to the students to bring home to mom and dad or whoever their legal guardian is, so that we can continue those conversations at home and it's not just happening in the classroom.
That's great. Great.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Yeah. What about the strip clubs? Tell us a little bit more about your involvement and success and
Yeah. Well, that really is one of my probably favorite success stories.
okay.
We had a woman not too long ago who had been in the club for years. She'd been there for quite some time, didn't feel like she had a lot of other skills and things to offer, but through having these consistent relationships, they call our group the church ladies, because we are a Christian based ministry. And so the women all come in there and sit down at the tables and have conversations repeatedly with the dancers. And this one dancer really felt comfortable to start opening up and said that she wanted to leave the club, but didn't know how. Like, who's going to hire a stripper, right? Was sort of her thinking. And so,
Yeah.
one of our team members who'd come to know her pretty well knew of a construction company that was hiring an office manager. And she was able to make that connection for her, help with some interview prep. And then the young woman went out and ended up getting a job and has fully left the
Great.
club. And,
Great.
I think it's real. That's a beautiful success story. And I love sharing that because it really does speak to the fact that you never know who is ready or when they're going to be ready. But a lot of people, we have to change how we think about success in the world of exploitation and trafficking. It's not just a numbers game, right? So if you're looking at an organization and saying, well, how many women did you serve? How many people's lives did you change? That's not really the best measurement because it is so hard for someone to leave a trafficking situation.
Yes.
And one of the reasons is because, and I think this is a big myth or misconception that we have in our community, is that, trafficking involves kidnapping by a stranger, probably in a creepy white van at Walmart. And that's generally not how it's happening. I mean, in South Carolina, specifically where we are in the upstate, the number one form of trafficking is familial. It's mom, it's dad, it's the grandparents, it's the uncle, it's some cousin, it's somebody in the family who's supposed to know, love, and trust them. And so for them to make the call or report the behavior is comes with huge risk. Will anybody believe me? Am I going to be ostracized from my family? What's going to happen to my loved
Hmm.
one? There's so many trauma bonds and issues and things that the courage it takes for them just to make a call to our organization, just to show up for an intake meeting, just to come to that
Hmm.
first appointment, that's success. But I think so
Right.
many times when we look at this, we think it's going to be like everything else, like how many people finished your rehab program or how many people graduated high school. And it's not apples to apples. So we just have to think about success a little bit different.
Yeah. I've heard some people I've interviewed say that the victims are as young as 2 years old.
Yes, in South Carolina, we had 315 human trafficking cases. 234 of them were minors, and there
Mm.
were, I believe, 4 in the 0 to 2 category. So, what that tells me is that we have a much bigger problem than we actually realize because 0 to 4-year-olds, they don't report this, right? They can't pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm being sex trafficked by my parent. What happens is somebody at daycare probably noticed some bruising in the genitals or something wasn't right, or they brought them into the hospital from bleeding or trauma or something, and somebody reported it, right? So what we know is that it's probably double, right? And don't quote me, but I mean, we know it's much bigger than what's actually being reported. So I think that that's one of the other big misconceptions like, oh, this isn't happening in my neighborhood or this only happens in big cities. And the
It
reality
could be
is
it could be
anywhere.
happening next door.
And yeah, and it
Yeah,
probably is. There's
yeah,
somewhere in your community where something like this is happening.
or
It's
even in
tragic.
your family.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, it comes down a lot of times to that vigilance and that the understanding, right? And having these discussions with our kids about what they can do to keep themselves safe. I always tell the kids and the teens that we talk to, like, keep all of your accounts private. You should never accept a connection request, a friend request, a snap, anything from someone that you don't know personally in real life. I don't care if they're connected with one of your friends. If you haven't met them yourself, don't do it. Don't accept them until you know them in real life. Because it's so easy, especially with AI, to make a fake
Hmm.
account, to connect with some
Yes.
people, to say, oh, I'm friends with so and so at your school. And next thing you know, they're inside your profile and they can see everything that you share,
Hmm.
which is why I also say don't share personal information. Don't tell people what school you go to. Don't say, oh, I have practice for volleyball from 4 to 5 p.m. at this place today because you're just literally telling the predators where you are. Not to mention, we should be very guarded with the kind of information that we share as well. And what I mean by that is predators are going to latch onto any little vulnerability or thing that they can. So if you're on there doing a video and you're like, oh, my parents suck, they never give me any freedom, they just don't get me. That's like the predator's gold because they're going to come in and they're going to
Exactly.
tell you, "Oh, well, I
Hmm.
get you. They just don't understand you. I'd give you all the freedom in the world. You should come live with me, or I will show you, all the best things of the world. I'd buy you this or buy you that." So they find those vulnerabilities, whether it's poverty, low income, foster kids is another area that they target. The Department of Justice system, right? As kids are coming out of incarceration or the juvenile detention centers, like they're waiting outside ready to pick them up. Somebody who's
Hmm.
bullied or lonely, right? If they don't have a lot of friends, kids of single parents. I mean, these are the things that these predators are looking for to try to fill whatever void that kid might have in their life. And this
Yeah,
goes, no, go ahead, please.
yeah, yeah. It's not like it used to be.
Mm-mm.
When I grew up, it was the white van
Yeah.
and the pervert
Yeah.
inside the van driving around the playgrounds offering ice cream or lost puppies or whatever.
Right.
It's that's
Yeah.
nowhere. That's not what they are now. They're
No.
educated. They're tech savvy. They're on all these social media sites,
Yeah.
and that's
And
where
the
the
gaming
playgrounds are now,
platforms.
and gaming
Exactly.
platform.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I still say don't go by the creepy white van in the Walmart parking lot. Let's be
No, no,
smart, right? But chances are
right.
that's not actually how it's going to happen to you. It's going to be somebody that starts chatting with you on Fortnite
Mhm.
or Roblox, which I have very strict in our house no Roblox policy. That's just we're not going to even mess around with that platform. But they will message you or they might offer you Robux. And then they might say something, and this is a really great red flag for anyone to pay attention to. Come over to Discord. Let's talk on WhatsApp. When they try to move you from one platform to another, and especially a platform like Discord or WhatsApp where they can't really track it. A lot of these organizations have said, oh, we're not going to comply with police. We're not going to share, transcripts or records or anything. That should be
Mhm.
a major red flag for you to stop
Right.
talking to that person immediately. And I also like to remind kids about the difference between secrets and surprises. And this works
Mhm.
especially well with those younger kids, right? Because, yeah, we might not say, hey, someone may try to sex traffic you, because, a 5 or 6 year old isn't going to understand what that means. But
No.
we can talk to them about an adult should never ask you to keep a secret. Now, that's different. If daddy says that he bought me a ring or something, a beautiful piece of jewelry for Christmas, and he doesn't want you to tell me, that's a surprise because eventually it's going to be known. It's something that's going to make someone feel excited and happy. But if someone's asking you to keep a secret, that, especially if it comes with shame or makes you uncomfortable, trust your gut. Something is off, and we need to talk to a trusted adult right away.
Exactly, exactly. And you mentioned earlier AI. These predators can create a whole body, a whole figure, a younger person, and pretending to
Yeah.
be them.
And here's
And
the other thing with AI, which I'm sure you're aware of, is on the sextortion side of this, right? So it used to be that I would always tell our students, look, I get it. You're teenagers. A lot of times we're in the high schools. I know you might be tempted to send your boyfriend or girlfriend a nude. Sexting is a
mhm,
thing. Don't do it though, right? Because you don't know how long you're going to be with that person. You don't know what they might do with the image. You're under 18. It's automatically considered child sexual abuse material. You can actually go to jail for doing that, right? But what we have now with AI, the gloves are off. All they need is a picture of you with your clothes on. And next thing you know, they can pop it into Grok or these other tools and they can disrobe you. And now they've got a nude of you that isn't a real nude, but it looks real enough. Nobody else is going to know it was AI generated. And now they're going to potentially try to sextort you. And
mhm,
so, if that ever happens, this is illegal and you need to take screenshots of the messages and what these people have said to you, block them immediately. And parents, you need to not get mad at your kids if they come and tell you this.
exactly.
We've got to create open conversation. And both of my kids know if you ever do something like this, like come to me. I want to help you through this situation. This is not something you need to face on your own. There's nothing you could do that would make me stop loving you. Let me help you through this. But if we don't have those kinds of relationships with our kids, they might try to hide it. And I don't know, have you heard of Gavin's Law?
No.
Okay, so Gavin Guffey was a 17-year-old boy here in Rock Hill, South Carolina, who had exactly this happen. He thought he was chatting with a 16-year-old girl online. He, in a moment of lapsed judgment, sent a nude picture of himself, and they instantly started sextorting him. They said, send us $1,000 or we're going to put this out on the internet. And he gave them the only $26 he had in his Venmo. He said, I need more time. At some point, the conversation turned very ugly because these guys, these people who do the sextorting, they don't care about you. And
No, they don't.
they said, kill yourself. Well, you should kill yourself then. And at about 3 o'clock in the morning, unfortunately, that is exactly what Gavin Guffey did. He took his own life in his parents' bathroom, and his father was in politics, and he created Gavin's Law to have retribution for this, So it's now illegal, and there is still not a big enough fine, still not enough jail sentence, but it's better than nothing. And so, again, just having those open conversations between kids and parents. If Gavin would have just gone to his dad and said, I did something really bad. I'm sorry. I did something really stupid. I won't even say bad, but just wasn't thinking. I made a mistake. He might
Mhm.
still be here today.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to go to your parents, there's also, we have to report this, so that we can take down these criminals, but you can go to takeitdown.nicmec.org, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and takeitdown.nicmec.org. They will help you get your images off the internet if they were taken before you were 18. So that's just a really great
Wow.
resource. Yeah, we always share that
That
with the
is good.
teens. Mm. And
That's
even if it
that's
doesn't
g
happen to
great
you,
information.
yeah, it may not happen to you, but what if it happens to a friend, or a
Mhm.
family member? You want to have that resource to be able to give to them.
Yeah, that is a great resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, this sextortion, are you familiar with the group 764?
Yes, unfortunately, I have seen the postings about that group. Yeah. I haven't encountered anyone personally who's been involved with that or, been victimized by that, but yes, I am familiar.
Yeah, they do stuff like, happened to the Gavin kid that they blackmail and
Yeah.
have them either commit suicide or murder somebody or sacrifice their pet or uh, bodily mutilation or whatever they can get, and it's a game to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
And it's
it,
yep, it's teenagers who started it.
yeah. And that's why being in Christian ministry, I mean, this really is the biggest fight for evil and good because everything about sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, I mean, it's all evil. There's no other way to describe
Yeah.
it. There's no redeeming
No,
qualities here, right? Like there's
no, there's nothing positive about it
no, nothing. And
except for
so,
maybe to the perverts. It's
right.
positive to them, but to a normal person,
Yeah, and it won't be
there's
positive
nothing
to them
normal.
because they're really killing their souls, whether they realize it or not. So, yeah, it's tragic all the way around. And of course, we pray for the traffickers too. We
Hmm.
want them to have a conversion and to realize what they're doing isn't good for anyone. So, but we can't hold our breath for that. So in the meantime, right, like parents really need to be vigilant. We cannot just hand our kids an iPad and walk away. We have got to start limiting screen time. One of the biggest things you can do as a parent is no phones in the bedroom, especially no phones in the bedroom after 10 p.m. And I can't tell
Hmm.
you how many kids are allowed to just sleep with their phone next to their head. And then you hear about stories like Gavin's and so many others where this is when the predators are on. This is when all the nefarious stuff is taking place because they know that the kid is isolated from mom and dad at that moment.
Hmm.
Parents, don't post pictures of your kids online. I'm sorry. I know that you want to show the first day of school and you want to show their birthday, but you're giving the predators information about your kids. Plus, you're giving them
Exactly.
images that they can use. And all, like I said with AI, all they got to do is pop it into Grok. And next thing you know, your kids are on the internet as child sexual abuse material.
Yep.
And
That
it's
is it.
tragic. Yes,
Yep.
exactly. My kids and I, we have a secret emoji, and they know that if they're ever somewhere or they need to be picked up or they have an uneasy feeling, they can text me the emoji and I will come get them, no questions asked. And, we
Very
had
good.
it exercised once. My son was at a sleepover and he sent me the thing. I came and picked him up. I said he didn't do his chores before he left, so he was grounded. He had to come home. No, no harm, no foul. And when I asked
Hmm.
him when he got in the car, I said, which you're not supposed to ask questions, but he seemed open to chatting. So I said, what happened? And he's like, well, they wanted to watch a movie that I don't want to watch. And I was like, oh, what movie? And I can't remember. I thought if they're going to play It or The Shining or something, like you remember the name of it, I'm sure it was something
Right.
pornographic, but I
Yeah.
didn't push anymore. And I said, well, I'm just glad you texted me. You're home safe and no worries. And I
Yeah.
think we have,
He was able to save face with the kid
yes,
with his friends.
exactly. Yep.
You came as the bad guy
Yep.
and pulled him out because he's punished, and he was able to leave with his head up, and
Exactly.
that's 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 a that's a great idea. That is a
Thank you.
wonderful idea.
Yeah, I'd love to see more parents enacting that with their kids because I think you'll be surprised how much they might use it, right? They'll probably take you up on that offer at some point, and it may be when you least expect it.
Mhm, mhm. But tell us some more what parents need to do.
Okay. So, this is one of the conversations I've actually had to have with my husband. I think a lot of times parents think they're being helpful by saying, if anybody ever harms you, I'll kill them. Well, let's go back to what we know about trafficking. And if a lot of people are being trafficked by someone they know, love, and trust, or someone in the community who has a lot of power, they don't want the idea of, oh my gosh, I'm going to tell my parents that my uncle has been trafficking me. They're going to kill him. So I don't want them to go to jail. I don't want my uncle to die. I'm not going to tell anybody, and I'm going to live with this secret for decades potentially to come. And so I just encourage parents that whenever you're talking about these things, the less emotion you can have about this, the more you can ask questions. Well, what do you think about this? Or why do you think this is bad? And just having open dialogues is always helpful. And just be careful about what you say to your kids because you might unknowingly be inviting them to actually shut down and not share things with you because of how
Exactly.
you've reacted to
Mhm.
something, which I know is hard, but we have to do
Yeah.
it.
It is. I mean, the predators use that against the kids, say, "If you say anything, I'll kill your parents or your brother or sister or whatever." So
Yeah.
you're basically lowering yourself to the predator's level when you say
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. So we
Even
want to be
though,
really careful that we have that
yeah,
empowering language and invite them
yeah,
to share as much as possible.
even though you may feel that way, and
Right. Yeah,
you don't want to say it in front of the children.
exactly. Yeah. And the other thing, I think the last thing I would just say on that it comes to mind for parents is also talking to your kids about sex and body parts and naming the body parts what they are, right? A vulva is a vulva, a testicle is a testicle. Like, let's just call it what it is. Because, there was one example, and this wasn't trafficking, but this was a story shared in a sex abuse training that I went to, where a young girl in like an elementary school kept going to her teacher saying, "He touches my candy. He keeps touching my candy." And they were like, well, don't let him eat your candy. Like, I don't, like, they don't know what to say. And then they realized candy is code for your vulva. And so
Mhm.
this kid had been trying to disclose an abuse, but because the parents never taught this kid the right language for their body parts, she didn't know how to articulate this. And I understand some people are squeamish or uncomfortable about it, but if you are squeamish and uncomfortable about it, your kids are going to be squeamish and uncomfortable about it. And so the more we can just call things what they are and not have a lot of emotion or embarrassment around it, the more that you're going to get kids to speak up and be able to share what's really going on.
Yeah, it's just a body part.
It really is. It's
It's a
no different than a femur or a medulla oblongata or an arm or a leg. Like,
yeah,
let's just call it what it is.
yeah. I mean, you don't want everybody to see it or
No,
touch it,
certainly. Right.
but it
Yeah.
is just a body part, and people need to be comfortable in their body
Yes.
that God gave them.
Exactly. Yeah. And Good Pictures, Bad Pictures is a great book for the younger kids, right? To just start to introduce them to our bodies and what good pictures or bad pictures might look like. I think pornography is just the biggest fuel for the sex trafficking trade, right? The sex trade. There is just 49% of sex trafficking victims say that they've had images and videos created of them against their will. So
Wow,
I think if our culture could start understanding that pornography is one of the biggest lies that we've been sold, right? That these performers love their jobs, that it's harmless entertainment, it's fine, it's not hurting anyone, even if you don't like it or want to do it, it's fine if somebody else does because what's the harm? And what we're finding is the science is saying, no, this is very harmful because one, we know that there's no way to tell when you go on a pornography site if this person is consenting or not.
exactly.
They don't do checks. They don't look at whether everyone's, was knew exactly what was happening. And pornography almost never stays pornography. At some point, it becomes extramarital affairs. It becomes buying sex on the street, trafficking, something like that. Because, you get so desensitized. And it
Hmm.
really is an addiction. It is one. That's why there's, a website called Fight the New Drug. This really is a drug.
It is. It is. It affects some of the same chemicals inside your body that some of the drugs do,
Yeah.
and it gives some people a high,
Hmm.
a sexual high, or whatever you want to call it.
It's that
Just knowing that,
dopamine.
yeah, a dopamine. Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's overloading your brain. So you're actually getting too much dopamine where now everything in life is just kind of like, you just can't really even enjoy relational sex anymore or, because you're so busy having object sex 100 times a
Hmm.
day. And not that I'm trying to shame anyone, but I think that there's a good portion of our society and men and women who watch pornography who, if they really understood how much abuse and non consensual sex is happening in these videos, they would make better choices. And I think they really would walk away from it. Now, I think there's another portion of people who are they're so addicted and they're so far down the rabbit hole looking at some of the most disturbing things you could ever I can't even dream up half the stuff that is out there who really need help, right? They need sexual addiction recovery, they need counseling, and the good news is, unlike most drugs that do damage to your brain, you can actually rewire your brain and heal your brain after a pornography addiction. So we
That's good.
always, yeah, right? There's some hope. There's some hope.
Mhm.
But it's like telling an alcoholic at a bar to stop drinking, right? It's like obviously they can't. They need help. They need to be in a program, AA, something like that to get through it. And pornography is of the same level. You need a support group. There's tools like Covenant Eyes that you can sign up with a code switch. If you use the code switch at checkout on Covenant Eyes, you will get 30 days free of their service, which will help you avoid looking at this online.
I mean, is sexual addictions, no different from a drug addiction? It starts off
Yeah.
small
Mhm.
and then it continues to grow because, you just need more and more and more and more to satisfy your addiction
Yeah.
or your craving or whatever. And then it eventually gets out of hand,
So
like
true.
a lot of things.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about some misconceptions. I know
Sure.
that's sort of what we've been talking about. Tell us some more what you have.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we probably haven't touched on yet or are that only women and children are trafficked. And
Hmm.
the reality is, anyone can be trafficked, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic background, religion. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? These predators will prey on anyone. But specifically, when we're talking about males, we know it's probably closer to 25 to 50% of the trafficking victims are males. And where we get this information from is the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children's reports, so NCMEC's reports on male child sexual abuse material. And so it used to be called child pornography, but child pornography makes it sound like it's okay. Like, oh, it's just another version again of this entertainment, but it's not. It's abuse material because no child can consent to commercial sex or to being filmed in this way. So we need to call it what it is. Thankfully, they have, renamed it now and they're calling it child sexual abuse material. But so we're seeing more and more of that pop up on the internet, right? And so if there's this much CSAM that is male, then we know that the trafficking victims, there has to be more males out there. But it's so underreported because males typically don't disclose for 20 years when they have had any sort of sexual abuse.
And
So
it's
that's
a
like we're
lot to
two
do with their
decades behind.
pride. Yeah,
Yes.
male pride.
Yeah, male pride. And think about our culture. We are such a victim blaming culture. I don't know if you've seen sometimes on social media. I mean, go to the comments section of pretty much any post on social media, and it's like the toilet of the internet. But there was a student, a young boy, who was sexually molested by now I know this isn't trafficking, but just to give you an idea of the culture and victim blaming. And half of the male comments were, "Where was this teacher when I was in school?" Excuse me? Where was someone who sexually abused you and used their power? Like, this is not something to be celebrated. And yet, here
Mhm,
you have all these men in the comments acting like this would be the greatest thing in the world. So, why would a guy ever speak out and say that this happened to them? And that there was something wrong with it because they're just going to be ostracized potentially by
mhm.
other men. So I think, if we have any hopes of getting our hands on more accurate statistics, we've got to change up our culture and stop celebrating abuse and making it sound like it's something to be wanted and really just calling it what it is, right? Which is that abuse. But it's going to probably take decades for us to get there, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And I get it, especially especially depending on the circles that you run in. If you have fears of like, oh, they're going to call me gay if I was assaulted by another male, then
Mhm,
there's again with the pride and with the ego and the embarrassment that goes with that. And a lot of times, our bodies do things sometimes that aren't aligned with the mind or the heart. So you may be assaulted or be trafficked by someone and your body responds. You get an erection, you are wet, whatever. And so your body is having a sexual response, but you don't want it. It's unwelcomed. And so a lot of times, we hear from victims, well, I must have liked it, or I didn't push them away, or my body reacted to it. And so we also need to separate and educate people on your body's response is not the same as saying you wanted it or you liked it or any of that, right? If someone did something to you and it was non consensual, this is a problem. And I'll just caveat it was non-consensual because we also have fight, flight, freeze, and appease. So sometimes when especially women, but men too, are in a situation where like the fourth response might be just to appease them, just shake your head, say yes, get
Mhm.
through it as quickly as possible, make the pain go away, and then move on with your life. That is absolutely a response that we may have when we're experiencing trauma. So just because you maybe consented, and I'm using air quotes if you could see me,
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that it was consensual, right? Appeasing someone just to get through the trauma or the pain is not the same as saying, yes, I want this. And we always
Mhm.
tell our kids in the prevention program that consent is an enthusiastic yes. It's not like, I guess so. I mean, maybe. Yes is like, yeah, I can't wait to do this thing with you.
Right.
It is
I mean, somebody's
reciprocal.
threatening you. If someone's threatening you, saying yes is not the same.
No, it's self preservation.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's survival sex in many cases. So yeah, we want to make sure that it is enthusiastic. It's reciprocal, right? Both parties are saying the enthusiastic yes, and it's ongoing. So just because you got consent last Wednesday doesn't mean you have consent on Tuesday. We need to
Mhm.
just check back in. Hey, we're still on the same page. We still both want to engage in these acts. Yes, and it's reciprocal. Okay, right? Then that's up to those consenting individuals as to what they're going to do together.
But, some of these victims, after a while, they're consenting.
Yes.
And because they're Stockholm syndrome or whatever you want to call it, they've just
Yes.
gotten numb to the fact. And it's just like just another day. Just another
Yeah.
day that I've got to perform this sexual acts to X number of people today
Yes.
to keep my quote boyfriend or whoever it may be, pimp or trafficker, whatever you want to label the person. I call them perverts,
Yep.
to keep that person happy.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because you're right. We need to investigate a little more for each individual as to like why they're saying yes to some of these things, right? Because you're right. At some point, that person has done such a good job in the grooming process of making them think that this is even
Exactly.
their choice. They asked to do
Mhm.
this. And
Right.
these predators and these groomers, they are so savvy. I mean, there's manuals on this stuff. They
Exactly.
actually teach each other how to do this to other human beings. Rebecca Bender she was trafficked in Las Vegas for years. You can Google her. There's a YouTube video to learn more about her story. But she has a book, and it's more of a workbook that you can use with participants, which we use sometimes in our programs with our participants. And she talks about like the tactics that predators have said that they used when they were trafficking other females. And it is diabolical. I mean, one of the things that stood out was the guy just wanted to make the girl think she was going crazy. So he would just take her keys or different things and hide them on her. And they would keep them up all night. They would always have an excuse of why they needed them to stay up. They would give them as little sleep as possible because, when you don't sleep, you can't use your frontal cortex. You can't think and be high functioning. You're delirious. You're exhausted. And I just thought, how diabolical that you would take someone's keys and hide them. Like the amount of effort that takes is just next level to me. But that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah. These criminals getting a lot smarter.
Yeah, and so we really are, unfortunately, in the trafficking space, we're always a little bit behind them, trying to catch up
Mhm.
to the latest tactics and what they're doing. And so that's one of the reasons we try to refresh our curriculum every 2 to 3 years, which we're in the process of doing right now for the 2027 school year. But so that we can make sure that we're giving the kids these latest tips and tools that they can be aware of.
What's something that people can do to maybe help fight this
Yeah.
sickness?
I'm so glad you asked that because I love to give tangible tips and things that people can really do because it feels
Good.
overwhelming at times, when you think
It does.
about this and what's going on and I'm on social media and I follow all these organizations so the amount of bad news I get on my social media feed on a daily basis, sometimes it just feels like are we even making a dent? And so I always say just start with your sphere of influence. Like who can you impact? You can impact yourself. You're educating yourself. Listening to this episode today and finding out what's really happening is the first step in fighting this because now you know what it really looks like. Share these kinds of reputable resources with your friends and your family, right? The people closest to you. Say, hey, listen to this podcast. This is interesting information. You got to know this. If you work at an organization that does business in a strip club. I can't tell you. I was in tech for years, and I can't tell you how many times the guys, when we would go to Vegas, all went to a strip club at night. And that was part of them doing business. Well, start speaking up against that stuff, right? Like, why are we going to go to a place where women are exploited? Is that really what our company represents? Let's not do that. If you watch porn, stop. Tell the men and women in your life why they shouldn't watch it either and offer to get them help, share resources
Hmm.
so that they can break free of that addiction. Sometimes it's just those simple things. If we all decided today, like, we're not going to watch pornography anymore, all these people would go out of business. If everyone said we're not going to buy sex anymore, then there'd be no more trafficking victims. So in a way, it really is that simple. If you want to do something bigger, I would encourage you to look into your, local charities, see if there's a place that you can volunteer at. Look up some of the organizations like Switch, like the Tim Tebow Foundation, other A21, people who are actually fighting this fight every single day.
Hmm.
Donate to them. Reach out to your local politicians. Make your views known. Let them know that, trafficking has no place in your community. Ask for the tougher laws. I mean, in Greenville, you get a $1,000 fine for littering. You will get a $250 fine for buying sex. That's backwards. We got to fix that, right? So we've got to start having tougher penalties because I think a lot of times in trafficking, we talk about the victim, and that's important. We want to hear these survivor stories. We want to understand what's going on. We talk about the trafficker, and we got to know what that looks like. But why are we not talking about the buyer? Why aren't we talking about the people who are keeping this supply and demand chain going? And so
Exactly.
we got to start holding these buyers accountable, and there's got to be stiffer penalties so that they know that we're taking this seriously. So
Yeah. If there's no
advocate.
no one out there buying, then there's
Amen. Right. There's no more victims. And then I'm out of a job. And I can honestly tell you for the first time in my life, I would gladly be out of a job. Like, please put me out of work. You'll do me a favor and the rest of the world.
I'd have to change my podcast
That's
topic to
true.
something else, which is
That's okay.
fine.
Yeah, we'll find something else for you. No worries. But yeah, just keep an eye out in your community. If you see something and it looks off, maybe you're at a gas station and there's a young woman in the middle of winter and she's in a tight mini dress, no coat, kind of hanging out by the side. Maybe she's got somebody who seems like that they're ushering her to a truck. Like, first of all, don't engage. Write down as many details as you can and call law enforcement. Right? But don't just turn a blind eye. If you think you see something, you probably do. And better to report it and be wrong than to say nothing and potentially have someone go missing or be, trafficked or who knows, even worse. But yeah, don't intervene. Like, we don't need vigilantes. We're not Liam Neeson. We're not kicking doors in and like rescuing people from chained up beds. Like, that's not what this looks like. And it is a very big business. And this is a criminal enterprise. So you need to be careful and just report it through the proper authorities, whether that's local PD, calling 911, or even the National Trafficking Help. But it's going to take all of us. We all have to do our little bit in our community if we have any hope in taking this evil down.
And it's growing and it's not being addressed fast enough, I don't think.
I agree.
And law enforcement, they're understaffed. They don't really have the resources to fight this growing epidemic as fast as it's growing.
It's true. Yeah, we have a very close relationship with our city captain, and she's phenomenal, and she's been very engaged. She's invited us on a couple of busts for some of the illicit massage parlors so that we could get when the women come out, we've got resources and things that we can help them with.
That's
But
great.
but that's what they say all the time. We just don't have the resources. We don't have the manpower. We don't have enough of the training. And just there's so many different moving pieces. And so, that's going to come with time. But in the meantime, there's so many people who need to be rescued and who need these life-saving prevention tools so that they don't ever fall into this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think that once someone's arrested and the victims they're freed, that's the end of it. But no, that's actually the beginning.
Yes.
There's a lot that the victims, survivors have to go through to get back. I mean,
Yeah.
I've interviewed some survivors that they didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They had spent all their adult life and teenage life in prostitution, and once they were saved, it was it. I mean, they were basically dumped back into their family if they accepted them, and they ended up having to go back to prostitution in order to support themselves because
Right.
they can make more money doing that than working at McDonald's
Yep.
because they didn't have the skills,
Yeah. And
and
that's
we
why
need
this is
more.
such a big problem, right? Because there's so many things. They need addiction recovery, they need housing, they need therapy, they need job development skills and support, career readiness, right? So it's we really need a lot of nonprofits and community resources coming together in order to support this situation and
Exactly.
these women, these
Yeah,
survivors.
we need more organizations like your organization.
Thank you.
And, on the other hand, law enforcement, that's not the end for them. They got, investigations and trials and all this other stuff that goes on
Yeah,
after that. So, yeah. So it's not the end for law enforcement side either.
that's right.
So in law enforcement, they got hundreds of other cases that they're working on simultaneously. So they can only devote so much time because they're shorthanded.
Yeah.
And I've heard that, from law enforcement that I've interviewed, and I've heard the diverse side from survivors I've interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And the middle part where, they both, I guess, come together to rescue, you know, there needs to be more of that. Like I said,
Yes.
more help, like your organization, more help on the law enforcement side. I I, I don't have an answer.
Yeah. No, I know. We don't. And you did mention one other thing that I wanted to touch on is like this kind of the beginning of the journey, the healing journey once you come out of the life
Mhm.
or are rescued, depending on how the person is removed from trafficking. Typically at Switch, we're not rescuing people, if you will. They're raising their hand, they're calling our hotline and saying, "Hey, I need help. I'm ready to leave the life," and then we're supporting them. But we typically at Switch see for about every year that you've been trafficked, it's going to take double to heal. So if you were trafficked for 1 year, you need about 2 years of healing. If you're trafficked for three, you need about 6 years of healing. So you talk about like some of these women that you've talked to have been trafficked for 20 some years. I mean, they
Mhm.
need almost a lifetime. Now it can happen
Exactly.
and they can find that
Mhm.
healing and that restoration. And everybody, of course, is different, right? Some are going to adjust faster, some are going to take longer. But on average, that's what we see is about double of however long they were trafficked for the healing process because it is incredibly traumatic for them.
Yeah. A lot of them I've interviewed in the past have ended up creating organizations like yourself, and
And
they
that's so
work with
beautiful.
for it is, they bring their knowledge and experience, forward, and they can relate to the person. So when the person
Yes.
says, I can't do this," say, "Yes, you can. I done it. You can do it too."
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have survivors involved in your organization, so that they can advise. We have survivors that we work with who advise us and help guide us, whether that's through our board or in, the day to day operations, because we want the voice of the survivor. We want to make sure that everything we're doing is trauma informed and the right standard of care for everything that they've been through. So it's also why we call our podcast Ashes and Beauty, because we can take from the ashes of exploitation and trafficking and we can create something really beautiful. So I love when people put their, pain and turn it into something purposeful. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that leads me to another question. I understand you have a book.
I do. Yes. So personally, before I joined Switch, I wrote a book called Grab Life by the Dreams, The Essential Guide to Getting Unstuck and Living Your Purpose. I spent many years in corporate, chasing paychecks, climbing the corporate ladder, only to wake up at the ripe old age of 39 and realize I was having a complete midlife crisis. Like, there's got to be more to life. What am I doing? You can't pay me to stay here and make another PowerPoint as a B2B marketer. Like, I just really felt very stuck. And, I knew I needed out, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I ended up leaving, starting a life coaching organization. I had a podcast for a couple of years called Rock Your Reinvention. Decided to take everything I had learned and experienced and teach that to other people through the book,
Hmm.
Grab Life by the Dreams, and really put my process down for anyone who's feeling stuck and wants to figure out what they want to do with their lives. And one of the things that I realized through that whole process was that so much of my life when I was in corporate was lived for me. It was lived for going out to eat, going on vacation, buying a Benz, having the latest purses and fashion, and it was all very transient. It was the hedonic treadmill. And it's just like an empty black hole that you just keep pouring more into, and you wonder why you feel so unfulfilled. And it was because I wasn't really doing anything for others. I wasn't leaving a legacy. I wasn't changing the world in the way that I knew in my soul I wanted to be changing the world. And so when I learned about sex trafficking, I started volunteering at Switch back in 2024 as prevention volunteer, just going into the schools and training. And then they had an opening last year in 2025 to join part time. And I just felt like the Lord was really calling me to just step in faith and do something bigger, and just really give back in this way. And it's been such a joy to go
That's
through that
great.
whole transition. And yeah, so if you're interested, you can get the book on Amazon, Grab Life by the
Okay.
Dreams. Yep.
I was going to ask where people can pick up your book.
Yep,
That's
you can
great.
go to Amazon, you can go to KarenFreeland.com, and you can get a copy of it there. But yeah, check it out. And of course, come check out the Ashes and Beauty podcast that Switch has. You can learn a lot more about sex trafficking and our ministry. And, if you feel compelled and you would like to give, you can go to switchsc.org and you can donate. Or if you're local to the upstate, you can get involved.
So is it just in the South Carolina area, the upstate area, or
Yes,
where are
right
you?
now we are predominantly in upstate South Carolina. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yes.
Good to know. Well, anything else you want to add?
Gosh, I think we have covered so much. I hope that this was helpful and gave everyone some tangible things that you can do to educate yourself, to protect your friends and family, and of course, to just start impacting the sphere of influence that you have. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share all of this today.
Well, thank you for sharing it. I know I learned something today, and hopefully our listeners or watchers will also learn something, and maybe something that was said today that will wake somebody up and
Hmm.
they'll free themselves from the bondage of traffic.
Mm, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you
You're
and
welcome.
good luck and be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we close today's conversation, I want to thank our guests for sharing their time, their knowledge, and their perspective. Conversations like this remind us that the fight against human trafficking requires all of us: survivors, advocates, educators, investigators, community leaders, and informed citizens working together. If today's episode challenged you, taught you something new, or inspired you to learn more, I encourage you to share it with someone else. Awareness begins with a conversation, and that conversation could make a difference in someone's life. For more episodes, educational resources, interviews, and information about the Omega Book Series, visit davidjstory.com. Make sure you click the like button, follow me on Facebook, and subscribe to my podcast. I'm David J. Story. Thank you for listening to The Secret World of Human Trafficking. Until next time, remember, always watch your six and others too.